speaking to a client the other day who started my program based out of a frustration for a plateau that he's been in for multiple years now when it comes to weight loss. And honestly, I see this just about every single day across the fitness industry where people are really just struggling to figure out, why am I not losing weight, right? I'm spending time in the gym. I think I'm eating better. I think I'm doing the things required to get in better shape, but it's just not happening. So what if I told you that there was a simple 3-step approach to breaking through all of your weight loss plateaus so that you could actually get to the goals that you have, do so in a way that's more enjoyable and less frustrating, and not sacrifice all the things that are important to you as a guy with a family, a married life, and a career and business that you care about along the way. What's up, guys? Josiah Novak with thetruetransformation.com. I help busy, successful, family and faith-driven guys master this whole thing we call fat loss and fitness, and do so in a way that's enjoyable, sustainable, and puts you in a place of success, in a position of success for the long term when it comes to staying healthy and fit. I lost 65 pounds back in my early 20s when I was struggling with eating issues, struggling to understand the game that is the body game. And there was many moments along the way where I hit plateaus, right? Where my weight wouldn't budge and I got frustrated. And ultimately there was many moments where honestly I backslided. I went backwards back to where I was before because I couldn't break through the ceiling that I thought I was bumping into. So you might be out there in a similar boat where you work out relatively consistently, you probably do some cardio, you've cleaned up your diet, and the weight just isn't moving. So let's break down the 3-step approach that I used to lose 65 pounds in 7 months, keep it off, and ultimately break through many plateaus along the way. The first step is we need to double check our data. Now, anybody out there who tells you don't worry about tracking, you don't need to track your calories, you don't need to track your steps, you don't need to track your workouts, like that might work for someone who doesn't really care about losing weight or isn't really trying to transform. But anytime you're in a position where you need to change something, data is going to be your friend. If you're a business owner or you're in a career that demands attention to detail, you know how vital tracking is. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you need to track 18 different things every day, but there's a couple key things that we need to look at to ensure that you're actually in a plateau. And if you aren't in a plateau, it'll be great news, but if you are, it'll give us clarity on what we need to change. So the first thing we need to double check is our calories, right? I hope this goes without saying. If you've been watching my videos for any period of time, or even if you're new here, it's starting to become second nature to understand that we do need to be aware of how many calories we're eating every day. Obviously, this isn't where we stop, but we need to double check that we're being accurate with our tracking. So if we're eating out a lot, if we're eating out every day or every other day, and we're still tracking our food, we gotta be aware that there could be just a little bit of room for error when you're eating out at restaurants. Even if you're eating at restaurants like Chipotle, for example, that have similar portions every time they give you similar meals, so you can be pretty accurate with the tracking. Even those places are subject to errors and honestly, subject to being off a little bit with calories. Now, in the short term, this doesn't mean a whole lot, but if you're eating out a lot, then that can start to fudge the numbers just a little bit, right? You might think, okay, I'm at this number of calories, but then when you really take a close look, you're 10, 20% higher. And once again, in the short term, not a big deal. But over the course of 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, this really starts to add up and can really impact how fast you lose fat. Now, along with making sure we're eating the right amount of calories, we need to make sure we're eating the right type of calories. So first thing we want to do is just double check that we're tracking everything that we eat, make sure we're accounting for maybe a little bit of room for error. With eating out at restaurants, personally, I always like to add 10% to whatever the numbers are in the tracking app that you use. Even in my own app, I'll just add a 10% portion just to make sure that I'm ahead of the game when it comes to eating out. But then I just want to make sure I'm getting enough protein. So oftentimes we fall into the trap of just tracking calories, right? We're just like, you know what? I know I need to be eating X amount of protein, but I'm actually just going to worry about calories for now. And so it starts to compound where you're eating more carbs, more fats, losing protein in your diet, and your body is going to do different things with that, right? It might store more glycogen, so your weight goes up a little bit. It might be slower to digest food if you're eating more fat. That can impact the scale, right? So we want to be aware of these things. We just want to get crystal clear. Am I hitting my numbers? And here's the good news. If you are hitting your numbers, then great. Then we know that we may need to adjust those numbers in order to lose fat. If you're not, well, then this is where we want to start. We want to make sure we're accurate as heck with our tracking for consistent periods of time, which leads me to point number 2. So we got the data with food dialed in, and we're going to have a couple other pieces of data that we talk about here in a minute, but let's talk about the accuracy of how much we're actually on top of our game, right? So a lot of times people will talk about how consistent they are. And they say, yeah, during the week, I'm super consistent. And then I'll hear them say something like, on the weekends, I have a couple slip ups, but, nothing too crazy. I'm pretty dialed in. I'm like, that's probably where the problem is. Okay. So let me break down some math for you real quick. Grab a notebook and let's do some quick work on the math. So let's just say in order for you to lose body fat, you need to be eating 2,000 calories a day. That puts you in a 500 calorie per day deficit because your body burns about 2,500 calories per day. So you're eating 500 calories less than your body burns every day if you eat 2,000 calories. Over the course of the week, that puts you in a 3,500 calorie deficit, which should lead to about a pound of actual body fat loss, along with some water. So you're looking at losing anywhere from a pound to 2 pounds of body weight over the course of time if you stick to that deficit. So what ends up happening though is if you're on top of your deficit, let's call it Monday through Thursday, and then Friday comes around and you eat 2,500 calories because you go out to eat and you're like, yeah, I'm on track. I tracked my food, but you don't realize there's hidden oils, there's things they add to the food like butter, and it could be a few hundred calories more than what you actually tracked. Maybe you have a glass of wine and you're like, okay, I was about 2,000, 2,200-ish calories, but you don't realize there's hidden calories in these meals. So on Friday, you're actually at maintenance calories. So we got to eliminate 500 calories from our deficit for the week, right? So if you're paying attention at home, instead of at 3,500 calories, we're now at 3,000 total for the week if we stay on track Saturday and Sunday. But here's where the issue comes in. Saturday and Sunday, you're like, yeah, I'm pretty good. Well, what does that even mean? It probably means like you think you're being pretty good and you're not going off the deep end. But let's say you have a couple meals out that happen to be a lot more calories than you might think. In fact, you have a couple of treat meals that are 1,000 calories more than what you think, or 1,000 calories more than what you normally eat. Well, you can quickly get into the range of being in a surplus, right? So let's just say on Saturday, you eat 3,200 calories. So not only are you not in a deficit anymore, but now you're in a 700 calorie surplus, all right? So if you're doing the math at home, instead of burning 3,000 calories for the week, now we're down to below 2,000 calories deficit, right? So we're starting to creep into that range where I call it no man's land, where you're in just a tiny little deficit, so the weight's not going to move a whole lot, right? Now, Sunday comes around, you're a little hungover because you had a couple drinks Saturday night. But once again, in your mind, you're thinking, all I did was have a couple drinks. All I did was have one meal that wasn't perfect. I'm fine. We just don't realize what we're doing. So Sunday comes around, your appetite's a little more out of control. And on Sunday, you go above your calories again. Not as much as you did Saturday, but you're just like snacking on a few little things, handful of almonds, you bite into your kid's, piece of pizza or something, right? And next thing you know, instead of being at 2,000 calories like you had committed to, you're at 3,000, right? You're at 3,000 because you ate a little bit more at some of the meals, you went out to eat, you tracked your food again, but you just didn't hit the calories that you're supposed to hit. All of a sudden, your deficit for the week is at like 500 calories, right? Not a whole lot. You're talking about 1/7 of a pound of fat. So you look at the scale on Monday and you're like, man, I was 200 pounds going into last week, and now I'm 200 pounds again, or I'm 199.9 pounds. And you get frustrated because here's the thing. When you're in this mode of doing everything you think you're supposed to be doing, but not moving the scale or not losing weight, you feel like you're in a plateau. It's just this gray area. I call it the dreaded 60% or 70% area, where when you're doing 60 to 70% of the work spot on, it feels like you're doing 100%, but you're not. And so you're not getting the results that come from 100%. So when you give that extra little bit of effort and you really tighten things up and you figure out a system on how to be like 90% on track, which is where we have our clients aim for, then all of a sudden the effort feels about the same, but the results happen. This is why I'm so passionate about helping guys who are busy, successful. They've done a lot of great things in their life with their family and their finances and all the things that they've acquired, but the one thing they don't have is the body, right? And it just doesn't align with who they are. They want to feel good in their own skin because they're guys who want to show up in a big way, right? They care about the people they serve. So if you're a guy out there who has a high amount of integrity, who just honestly wants to look good naked, but isn't doing it for the wrong reasons, like ultimately just wants to feel good about himself so he can go out and be the best version of himself, check out the information below this video. There's an opportunity for you to take the next steps if you're serious about making a change. So let's wrap up this point number 2, which is we got our calories double checked, we tracked our protein. Now we're double checking that we're being on top of our game 7 days a week. Once again, nobody's perfect here, but what we want to do then is if we look at the calendar and we're like, okay, I see where the problem part of my week is. It's the weekends, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be the weekends. It might be a Tuesday and Wednesday where things fall off the rails a little bit. What we want to do, instead of trying to say, okay, I have to be perfect on these days, we want to create a system that allows you to be a little bit more strict on your good days, right? So push you a little bit more on your good days where you're like, dude, I'm dialed in, I'm not hungry. Like I could just fast all day. Like honestly, if I wanted to, I don't even care about food, right? On these days, because you're so busy or you have so much going on. Maximize those days a little bit more. Tighten up things where we can on the tough days, but give ourselves a little bit more wiggle room so that on the days where we've been struggling, it doesn't impact our fat loss as much. Okay, that's really the biggest secret here, right? That's the insight that I want to give you is you don't necessarily have to clean up the bad days as much as you think. It might just mean being a little bit more aggressive on the good days. Cool? Cool. All right. So let's talk about the last thing you need to do, or that I did to break through the plateau that will help you do the same thing. So everybody wants to talk about diet. Everybody wants to talk about workouts and cardio. And I do think you need to double check that you're tracking your steps, okay? But let's talk about everything you do outside of the kitchen and the gym and how that will impact, getting through a plateau. First things is your movement. If you're not tracking your steps, I highly recommend doing it, at least for a period of time, to make sure you're getting enough activity outside of your workouts. You might find that you're just simply not hitting a high enough step goal to support fat loss. Just because you're eating better and working out doesn't mean that you shouldn't be burning calories the rest of the day. So my recommendation is invest in a smartwatch, get something that tracks your steps, and just double check that you're hitting your step goal each and every day. It's going to have a huge impact on fat loss. The other thing is your sleep. If you're not getting enough sleep, so many things can be out of whack. Number one, your cortisol levels can be crazy high. Your body isn't handling stress very well. So it's going to hoard body fat a little bit more. It's going to be a little more stubborn when it comes to losing fat, a little slower. Doesn't mean it won't lose fat. It just could be a little slower. Make sure you're getting enough sleep. Take care of your sleep quality. Get to bed at a consistent time. Make sure that you're getting enough deep sleep. Turn off the screens if you can. And try to maximize the time that you have in bed. I recommend 7 to 8 hours in bed. You're not necessarily going to sleep that entire time, but if you can get rest and just relaxation for that amount on a consistent basis, that will serve you really well when it comes to fat loss. The other thing is, listen, you don't need to kill yourself to lose fat. One thing I see people do is they throw everything in the kitchen sink at this problem, right? They're training twice a day, they're cutting their carbs, they're doing all extreme stuff, and then they burn out and they go back to what feels sustainable, feels healthy. And honestly, it's probably maintenance for most people, right? So they go in this like extreme fat loss. I'm going to push it. Then they go back to maintenance and they wonder why their weight really doesn't change, right? It kind of stays in this zone for a long period of time. I can promise you the biggest hack that will save you so much time, so much headache, and honestly, probably a lot of money in the process is to invest in a coach. I strongly believe that any part of your life, and this doesn't just go for fitness, because yes, I do fitness coaching, so of course I'm biased to encouraging you to coach or to get coaching. But here's the secret. No matter what your issues are, maybe you have a plateau in your financial future. Maybe you have issues uncovering how to blast through a business problem or deal with a relationship struggle. Coaching can save you loads of time, loads of headache, so many mistakes. I don't know why more people don't just invest in coaching. I know it's probably a money thing, but you got to think bigger than that. You got to say, well, how much money is it going to cost me? How much time is it going to cost me? Because what is my time worth? Well, if I'm going to take 3 years to figure out a problem versus 3 months, I strongly suggest looking at that as a massive investment, massive ROI. So If you can't get through the plateau on your own by following some of the principles I just laid out here, I would strongly recommend taking a look at some of the offers that we have below this video. You may not be ready for coaching right now, but there are some next steps that will help you down this path of not only breaking through a plateau, but ultimately finding a place where you feel great about your health, how you look, how you feel, and just how you're living your life day to day in a body that you can be proud of. So check out the description below if you're interested in that. Let's wrap up here, and I'll just tell you that fitness is the lowest hanging fruit to improving your entire life. Don't get hung up on just the scale. Don't let the scale be the dictator of whether or not you're healthy, whether or not you're doing what you need to do. Still do the things just for the sake of the mental benefit that you get, the dopamine response, the endorphins that come from a great workout. Don't just get hung up on, my weight's not moving. I know it can be frustrating, but it can be fixed with a couple key tweaks, but still do it for the love of the game, right? The love of feeling good about yourself. That's all I got for today. My name is Josiah Novak with thetruetransformation.com. Check out the description of this video if you want to learn about next steps, how we might be able to help you get to where you want to be with your health and fitness. In the meantime, life moves fast. Make it count. Talk to you in the next one. Peace.